Activities so far. It's kind of funny, but the best thing about it is looking at the kids and how cute they are in their costumes and what they want to be and the things they do. It just kind of makes you smile. You look at them and you know that's what it's about. It's that type of thing. That's what it's about. It's that type of thing. I know that a whole lot of bad things get associated with Halloween and all of that dark stuff and everything, but you know what? You can associate dark stuff with every day of the week. It's how you individually do things and what you represent and what you honor and the reasons you do things. Everything's not totally bad. It's like, I'll tell you an example. This weekend we got booed at my house. I'm like, I didn't understand. I got up Saturday morning. I look out on the porch, and there is a pumpkin basket sitting on my front porch full of goodies. And so I went out and got it, and we brought it in. We opened it up, and we look, and there's like some cookies in there. There's some candies in there. There's like a little fall sign that says "Welcome Fall," like a little wall hanger sign. All this stuff, and I'm looking at it, and then we get the paper out, and it says "You've been booed." And they said everybody in the neighborhood, what they're doing is they were going around and they would boo somebody. They would do that, give them that stuff. And what you're supposed to do is within a couple of days, you're supposed to pass that on to 2 more people and boo them. They said, don't let them see who put it on the porch, but you boo them. And then there's a little sign in there that you stick in your window that says, I've been booed. That way they don't boo you again. So I'm like, I like this. Let's turn this into something good, because it's like we're receiving one thing, but you're giving two. Did the Bible not tell us it's better to give than to receive? Well, you're giving twice, but you're getting once. And I thought that I like the setup of this already. So yesterday we had to go out shopping, and we picked up our boo stuff. We got us a couple of pumpkin baskets and stuff, and we loaded them full of goodies and stuff. And last night about 10:30, we went walking out, and the house right across the street from me, I know they got a couple little kids, and I said, let's do that one. And Crystal goes, we'll get the other one down there. And I said, okay, that sounds good. I said, which house you going to do? And she goes, okay, I'll do the one down there, you chicken, is what she told me. I just wanted to give the one to the ones with the kids, honestly. But anyway, so we go down, we go across the street. It's dark. I leave the dog, and he wants to come everywhere we go. Leave the dog, and we're going covert now. We can't be seen. So we go out and quietly cross the street, and I go and I put my pumpkin down, and I come back off the porch, and I start to walk down, and Crystal starts down the street, and the dogs start barking that are between the 2 houses and everything, and she's like freezing, and then she goes and she puts it on there, and we get back in and everything. And I thought, well, that's really neat. I'm glad we was able to do that. A little bit later I talked to her, and she said, you know what? She goes, I was up there, and she goes, I happened to see them pull into their house. The people right across the street, I seen them pull in, and little kids, they spotted the pumpkin on the porch. Because she said they got the car in the garage, and here come the little kids running out. What's this? And they ran and they grabbed it, and they ran in the house with it. And I said, that's it right there. That's the good right there. What you just saw, that's it right there. That's what it's for. You can make anything good. Don't let the bad outweigh the good. Don't ever let the bad outweigh the good in your life. That's ridiculous. But I just felt real good that we was able to do that. It's just, I don't know, little neighborhood tradition. I guess they started up. I don't know, but I like it. I like that you can do good all the time. All the time. I don't know. There's something associated with this part of the season and everything. Everybody wants to be scared. They want to be scared. You go to haunted houses. I don't do haunted houses anymore. I did that when I was a kid like everybody else, but I don't waste my time with that stuff. And but they want to be scared. It's like every channel is showing scary movies now. You're running into Halloween. You're running into all these scary movies and everything. And it seems like everybody wants to be scared. There's some kind of, I don't know. It's inherent human nature of getting scared. And I don't know what that's all about. It's like, I think it's getting scared and then realizing that you overcame it. It must be something like that. It must be something in us that's like that, because I don't know why everyone would want to be scared. But I don't know. It's just something about us, and it's this time of year. It's prevalent and everything. So how about we have a little scary event here in the Bible? You want to do that? I'll give you a scary account in the Bible for your Halloween Sunday school. It's a scary account in the Bible, but once we do and go through, I think you may realize the reason that it's scary, it's really in your perspective of what's scary. Here in the book of 1 Samuel, the 28th chapter, I'd like to start in the 3rd verse. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah, even his own city. And Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. And the Philistines gathered themselves together and came and pitched in Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. And when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. Then said Saul unto his servants, Seek me a woman that hath a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her. And his servant said to him, Behold, there is a woman that hath a familiar spirit at Endor. And Saul disguised himself and put on other raiment, and he went and 2 men with him, and they came to the woman by night. And he said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me up whom I shall name unto thee. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he hath cut off all those that have familiar spirits, and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then liest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul answered to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? And he said, Bring me up Samuel. And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spake to Saul, saying, Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul. And the king said unto her, Be not afraid, for what sawest thou? And the woman said unto Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth. And he said unto her, What form is he of? And she said, An old man cometh up, and he is covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel. And he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And Samuel said to Saul, Why hast thou disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God is departed from me, and answered me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called thee, that thou mayest make known unto me what I shall do. Then said Samuel, Wherefore then dost thou ask of me, seeing the Lord is departed from thee, and is become thine enemy? And the Lord hath done to him as he spake by me. For the Lord hath rent the kingdom out of thine hand, and hath given it to thy neighbor, even to David, because thou obeyedst not the voice of the Lord, nor executest his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore hath the Lord done this thing unto thee this day. Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with thee into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow shalt thou and thy sons be with me. And the Lord also shall deliver the host of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. Then Saul fell straightway all along the earth, and was sore afraid because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no bread all the day, nor all the night. I'd just like to stop right there. And in this event in the Bible, we've got King Saul, and at the time that the events take place here, Samuel had died. He had already died. We know that was Saul's prophet. That was the man that could talk to God for Saul. Samuel had a very close relationship with God, and when he needed to inquire of the Lord, he would go to Samuel, and he would ask Samuel, ask of God about this situation. Ask of God about this. Ask of God about that. And Samuel had died, so he didn't have his prophet anymore. We know that before this had all happened, God's judgment came down on Saul, and he said he was renting the kingdom from his hands. Saul was the king of Israel. He was renting the kingdom from his hand, and he was giving it to his neighbor, which was David. He was giving the kingdom to him, and it was because of his disobedience. Do you know God will let us do things our way to an extent, as long as it's not directly opposite of what God's way is. God lets us make our own calls on certain things. He lets us live our lives certain ways when we make our decisions, and he lets us and blesses us to do things and to it doesn't matter to him, or everything matters to him. But what I'm saying is he'll let you make a decision. He'll let you have your life and do things. but not when they're in opposition to God. That's the whole thing that happened to Saul. Saul was the king, and as time went, Saul liked being the king. And Saul liked making the calls. Saul liked giving the commands. Saul liked being the ruler of everybody. Saul liked to dictate the way it was going to be. And he started doing things his way. And he became a proud king. He became a fleshly king. When you look at when you look at David the king and Saul the king, you see two opposite people. You see David, a man after God's own heart, and you see Saul was the king that Israel wanted, the one that they could see, that was head and shoulders above everybody else. That's the king they wanted. And they got a fleshly king, a man that was after the flesh. David, I believe, was a king after God's heart. So it was like two totally different type people. So it came to the point where Saul disobeyed God. Saul disobeyed. Remember, he gave sacrifice the one time? He didn't wait for Samuel to get there. I'm tired of waiting on him. I'm just going to give the sacrifice myself. I'm the king. I can do what I want. No, you can't. And he disobeyed God. There was another time when he was supposed to totally wipe out the Amalekites. Totally wipe out that opposition. Have nothing, bring nothing from it. Totally wipe it out. Because that will be a very bad thing towards Israel. And I'm giving you the command to wipe it totally out. He didn't do that. Oh, I did everything God told me to do. Remember when Samuel came to see him? I did everything that God told me to do. Well, then what's the bleating of the sheep telling on you for? Because I hear spoil. I see things that it was supposed to be totally wiped out. I said, bring nothing. I want nothing of that. And he was doing it his way. He was doing it his way. That's what caused God to rent the kingdom from his hands. You're going to no longer be king. Disobedience separates us from God. Disobedience separates us from God. Kenny, I'm saved. I'm one of God's children. I'm saved. Disobedience separates us from God. It makes distance in our lives. It makes us distance from God. It puts space between you and God that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be there. Guys, you know when you've had a good, close walk with God? You guys have you guys had life? Have you had your ups and downs? Have you had your stronger times with God and your weaker moments in the flesh? You're people, aren't you? When you've had that strong, good walk with God, when you felt near him, when you've been close to him, when you've been in your Bible, when you've had great prayer, when you've been in good church service, when you're walking with God and you feel that there's a peace about that. There's a confidence about that. There's a way that makes you feel. It's a way that makes your life full. It makes you happy. It gives you contentment in your heart that you're not dissatisfied. You get content in heart with God. When you start down the trail of disobedience, you start separating from that. You start separating from those things. When you start separating from those things, you're not quite as content as you used to be. You don't have quite the peace in your heart that you used to have. Things upset you a little easier, a little quicker than they used to. All kinds of little things start happening in your life, and Satan is subtle. You don't even notice a lot of times. It just starts taking hold. It starts doing things, and it starts separation. And if Satan can keep pushing you further and further and further, he'll do it. And he wants us separate. He doesn't want us up close to God. Saul went down that trail, and he started separating himself. And he was getting further from God and further from God. It came a point in time where Samuel had died. That was his go-between for God. I'll just go to Samuel and ask him. Well, what's God think about it? I'll just go to Samuel and I'll ask him. And Samuel would speak to God and give him the prophetic message. He would tell him what God wants. Saul didn't always obey what God wanted. It came a point in time that Samuel died. He was no longer there. Then it came a point in time where the Philistines had gathered an army, and they had encamped their army against the Philistine army, and they were ready to battle. And it said Saul became scared. I don't want to go into no battle without God, do you? I don't.
Kenny, I was just thinking, hey, these people that miss church continuously for no reason, ever doing the same thing.
Yeah, making distance.
I don't care how they act when they come. You miss church 3 or 4 times, and you're not going to come in here shouting when you come back. Maybe repenting, not shouting.
That's true. That's true. That's true. You make distance in your life. It affects your whole life. It affects your church attendance. It affects your prayer time. It affects your reading time. It affects your time that you give to God. It affects you. He's saying the distance, it starts and it starts becoming visible when you don't see people anymore. There's people sitting at home more in their home than they are in here. When you weigh the things out, and it shouldn't be that way. We should draw up close to God. We should draw up close. It makes an effect on your life, and your life makes an effect on other people's lives, whether you know it or not. It affects other people's lives.
It does.
It really does. So they gather to battle, and Saul becomes afraid when he sees the forces he's going to be facing. So he says, well, let's inquire of God what to do. Samuel's not there anymore. So he inquires of God, and he asks him, and God's not answering him. He's talked to him before in a dream. No dreams. The Urim, nothing. The prophets, nobody brought a word to him. God was not answering him at all. Why was that? Because he already had the word from God. He already knew what God's answer was for his life. But God didn't answer him. So what does he do? Find me a woman with a familiar spirit. Find me a medium. Find me a wizard. Find me a witch. Find me some. Are you serious? I'm going to find God by looking that way. How far was his distance from God now? It must be like vast. He must be way out. He must be way out from God. If he's looking that direction to find God, he's looking in the wrong direction. He is looking in the total wrong direction. Besides that, by his law, by his rule, he had put them all out of the land. They were all put away. There was no spirits, no mediums. There shouldn't be any of them around. So he says, find me one. And they immediately come up with an answer. Is this a little bit off? Hey, there's one in Endor. What are we, a bunch of lawbreakers? At that point, we were in a dark time. Did I tell you this was a scary story? We're in a dark time. We're in a dark, dark time. So he goes to this lady. He disguises himself, and he's going to go in and pay the visit. And he goes in unto her, and he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call up whoever I tell you to call up. She says, don't you know the law that Saul brought down? She's talking to Saul. Saul, don't you know the law that Saul brought? That I would take my life into my own hands if I did something like this. I can't do this. You're just laying a snare to kill me. My life will be gone if I do something like that. He says, I swear by the Lord, you'll get no punishment for doing this. He gave her a pardon before she even did it. He gave her a pardon. You start kind of looking at it in today's terms, she was wondering if it was a sting operation. Is he coming in here just to get me in trouble? Is that what he's doing? Is he the police? Is he coming in here to get me in trouble? Is he trying to investigate here, or what is he doing? He said, there'll be no punishment come to you. So she says, well, who would you want called up? And he said, Samuel. I'm wondering if you could put a pause between verses right there. There would be a good pause right there. He said Samuel. And for me, I would pause a minute and think. Because the next thing says, and when she saw Samuel, she screamed. So I guess she tried to bring him up. And guess what happened? God sent him. You guys ever seen the movie Ghost? Do you know what I'm talking about? Does this not make you think of Ghost? I can't help read description. I think of the movie Ghost. There is nothing new under the sun. They write these movies, they think we've really come up with something original. Let me take you here to the book of 1 Samuel. I think you're plagiarizing here. Because Whoopi Goldberg was supposed to be this medium and everything, and she didn't have no power. She was duping people. She was just deceiving them. She would tell them what they wanted to hear and get some cash out of it. Did you see it when she first started and everything? Goes, I see Lionel. No. Roger. No. She started just naming all names. When his one, there it is. Told you, I saw it. I saw it. And you could tell she's the biggest fake there ever was. And then the guy comes to her, supposedly in the movie that's a ghost, and he speaks to her and scares her to death. You want to talk about screaming? She was screaming. In all her actions, she was screaming. She was scared to death because what she was trying to fake actually happened, and it scared her to death. When you see this story, and she says, call up Samuel. So she probably goes into her rigmarole, and she calls up Samuel, and here comes Samuel. And she screamed. I don't know what was said in the conversation, but she immediately knew that that was Saul. And Saul was the one that put everybody out and could kill her. And she goes, why have you done this to me? You're Saul. And suddenly the light is coming on. Oh, get it? The light is coming on in this dark night here. And she sees Samuel. He said, what have you seen? Saul's immediately, what have you seen? I saw an old man, and he was wearing a mantle. He said he knew immediately it was Samuel. It said he knelt down, and he asked him, what should I do? How should I proceed? The armies are gathered against and everything. How should I proceed? Samuel had this very new, original message for him. God already told you that he rent the kingdom from your... He already knew. He already knew what the answer was. He says, why are you bugging me? That's my words, but he said, why did you disquiet me? Why are you bothering me? I've already told you all this. You already know this. He said, the kingdom is rent from your hands. You disobeyed when God said for you to totally wipe out Amalek. You disobeyed. And now this has come upon you. Tomorrow at this time, Israel is delivered into the hands of the Philistines. And you and your sons are going to be with me. Tell me that wasn't scary news. And it said, how would you take that? How would you take that? How did Saul take that? It said he fell all over on the ground. I bet it wasn't pretty. If you fall all over, you ever slipped and fall on the ice outside or something like that? And it's one of those, you're trying to catch your balance things, and maybe sometimes you go down on one knee. He was all over. He was all over the ground. He just went down in a heap. And he was fearful of the words that were spoken to him. The whole thing was he already knew the words that were spoken to him. Now I'd like to touch on something right here, lightly. We know they still have these mediums and these things out here in the world and everything, and can I tell you something? Don't mess with it. Basic and simple. We're going to cut it off right there because I'm not going to glorify that stuff, and I'm not going to talk about that stuff. So it's done. I want to talk about what God's doing here. What God's doing here is he sent him Samuel. He wanted to see Samuel. I just need to hear these words from Samuel. I need to hear what God's word is to me. Why do you think that is? Because of his past and his past procedures and the way he handled himself, the things he did. Remember, he went and he did the thing with the cattle, and he wasn't supposed to bring back any spoil and all this stuff. And Samuel said, why have you disobeyed? Why have you disobeyed? Why would you disobey what the Lord said? When he offered the sacrifice, why would you disobey? Why you're not even in your office now? This is the priest office to do. You're not even doing what you're... Why would you disobey? And he would constrain Samuel until Samuel would finally turn and go with him. When he totally had rent the kingdom from his hands, he constrained Samuel to stay with him, that he rent his mantle. He tore his clothes trying to hold on to him. Oh, don't go. He didn't want to be separated. Don't go. And he finally constrained him that he went with him. So he's thinking, as long as I do these things, I can change their minds. He gets to the point where judgment day has come, and he thinks he's going to change their mind. I just need to talk to Samuel. Just a minute, I just need to talk to Samuel. I'm just going to change his mind. I'm just going to change God's mind. I'm just going to change how this is all going to go. If I could just talk to Samuel one more time. Let me get Samuel here. God sent him Samuel. He said, this has come to pass. You already know these words. You already know the judgment. Can I tell you something? You're not going to talk your way out of it at Judgment Day.
That's right.
We're without excuse. We're without excuse at the judgment. Does that scare you? It scares my fleshly man. It does. It scares my fleshly man because I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I have nothing to hide behind except the spiritual man does, the blood of Jesus. Because the only thing I can say at that time is guilty as charged. Jesus saved me. I was guilty, and he covered me with his blood. I don't even know if we're going to have to say that because he knows those that are his. I don't know, but you're not going to be able to talk your way out of it. That's what happened here. Judgment came, and you're not going to be able to talk your way out of it. So why is this scary? I'm telling you a scary story. I'm telling you a scary story here for your Halloween Sunday school. Scary story. Why is this scary? Oh, because they're bringing up dead people, and it's so scary. You know what? That's not the scary part of this story. Samuel was a friend of his, and he saw his friend again. That's scary. Guys, I'm looking forward to a day when I'm going to see all my friends. That doesn't scare me. That part of it doesn't scare me at all. There's people I'd like to talk to. If I could have a conversation with my dad and just sit down and talk a while, I'd do it. You know what I mean? You've got this too. You've got this too. That doesn't scare you. Does that scare you? It doesn't scare me at all. This doesn't scare you. The scary part of this story is the distance that people can get from God. I don't want to go nowhere without God. I don't want to be distant from him. I don't want to have those spaces. I don't want to have those lapses. We're sinful human flesh. I get that. But you have to put an effort in going towards God. And guess what? When you have an effort going towards God, he comes towards you. You draw nigh unto him, he'll draw nigh unto you. That's what the Bible tells me. You just depend on the promises. You draw nigh to him, he'll draw nigh to you. So if you take a step in his direction, he's coming your way. He's coming your way. That tells me you can get back with God. It's up to you. It's up to you. Saul could have got back with God. Saul could have got back with him. How do you know that? Let me introduce somebody else that's going in the same time frame in this situation. Who's that? David. Do you know what's happened to David right here? Let me back up the story. I went about last week teaching Sunday school, backing up the story. I started reading, and when I started studying this, I backed up the story, studying. What's happening to David here? David is in exile. Remember, Saul was trying to kill him. He knew that the kingdom was given over to David. And so what he went about doing is trying to change the way it was going to be by trying to kill David so he couldn't get the kingdom, and I can still be king. So he was pursuing David and trying to kill him. How do you think David liked that? I don't think I'd like being a wanted man chased after all my life, having to look over your shoulder, living in caves. Remember the cave story we had a few weeks back? Where he's in the cave of Adullam? He's running for his life. There came one part where he was hiding in the cave and Saul came in the cave. Said he cut off the border on his garment and then told him, I could have killed you. Look at your garment. He looks down, there's a hole. And he's got the piece of cloth. He said, I was that close to kill you, but I won't strike the Lord's anointed. Well, neither will I do anything bad to you. That was Saul's answer. Neither will I do anything bad to you. Then why was it later he's right back on his heels pursuing him again? Right back on his heels pursuing him again. And it said David, they were at camp looking for David, and they were all sleeping in camp. And it said David snuck down in the camp and took the king's spear and a cruse of water that was right there by his head, and took it and went all the way across this big valley. They were very far apart, and he started shouting for Abner. You're not guarding him very well. Abner, why don't you answer? Finally he answered. He said, who is this? Who's speaking? He says, it's David. He said, here's the king's spear in my hand. Send one of your young men over to get it. Do you know I could have done the king? Then Saul overhears the whole conversation. He says, David? Is that my son David? Is that my son David? Oh yeah, let's make up right now. I'm just trying to kill you. Is that my son David? Oh, well, I can't believe it. He goes, here's the spear, here's the cruse of water. I could have done you harm, but I'm not going to strike the Lord's anointed. Bless you, my son, bless you. I can't believe, bless you. You go in peace too, and I'll go my way. And they part ways again. And the next thing that David said was, one day he'll end my life if this continues like it is. He's not going to stop. One day he'll end my life. And David became in a very discouraged, scared place. How do you know that? Do you know where you find him next? Heading to the Philistines, and he went to live with them. He went to live with his enemy. You find him in the camp of the Philistines, encamping with them. He told Achish, the king of the Philistines, I'll fight with you. Saul's trying to kill me. And so he sent him out, like he had a band of 600 men. He sent him out to do raiding parties. And he goes, where have you been? We went to the southern part of Israel, and look at all this we brought back. And what he was doing is he was fighting the enemies on the borders of Israel and trying to make it out like he was fighting Israel. See, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. Now give me a place to stay. He gave him Ziklag to live in, a city for him and his 600 men. There you go. And he's living in the midst of the enemy. Now you tell me that's not a good place to be? I'm going to leave God in the land of promise, and I'm going to go live with the enemy because Saul's trying to kill me. I'm just getting discouraged. I'm getting beat down, and I just can't go on. I just can't do this. There come a time when those two armies were meeting. Remember, this is the same things unfolding right at this time. Those two armies were going to fight. It was the day that they came to battle. And it says the princes of the Philistines looked over and said, what is this Hebrew doing here amongst us? And the king says, he has done nothing but loyal to us. He's been on our side the whole time. You can't speak bad about him. He said, yeah, we're going to get in the middle. These are my words, but this is what he's saying. We're going to get in the middle of the battle, and he's going to turn on us and go with his people. And we're not going to fight like this. And all of them were displeased. All the princes of the Philistines were displeased. And the king said to David, just go back to your town. David's like, what have I done? He goes, you didn't do anything. Just go back to your town. So he goes back to Ziklag. We know how the battle turned out. Samuel already told us how the battle was going to turn out. But he went back to Ziklag. You know what he found when he went back to Ziklag? It was burnt to the ground. Do you know what had happened? The Amalekites came in, burnt the city to the ground, and stole all their families and goods and took off with them. Now tell me where David was at in his life, where he's living in the midst of the enemy. He's got wives and children. The men around him have wives and children, and they all have a town that they're living in, and they're trying to make do, living in the enemy territory. And they come back, and the town is destroyed, and all their family and everything they've got's been taken from them. He's living in enemy territory. He has nothing. It's all been taken from him. He has nothing at all. It said they wept sore till they could weep no more. They were broken. It's like, what do we do now? What do we do now? First thing to do is you shouldn't have gotten at a distance from God. They had come to the point where they were just broken. But guess where you can go when you're broken? Right to God. And He'll accept you. He went to God. It said David encouraged himself in the Lord. He went to God and he spoke to Him. And he said, God, would you have me pursue after him? I'll just do whatever you say. He's no longer going freelance and living in enemy territory. He's asking God, what do you want me to do? He's getting back where he should be, where Saul should have turned and gotten where he should be, where we should all turn and get where we should be. He said, God, what do you want me to do? He said, pursue after them, for you'll surely overtake them. You'll get back everything you lost. He pursued after and was able to rescue every one of the families, every one of the people, and all the spoil, all the goods. And there was more spoil than he even knew that they all was able to rescue and bring back home. Brought it all back home. They get back home, and on their way to the battle, let me insert something here. On their way to the battle, there was 200 of the men that were so weary, so fatigued from it all, they couldn't go on any further. So they left them behind with all the stuff that they only had remaining. They left them there to guard that, and he took the 400 after them. 200 men sat back at home guarding the stuff. There's like the Bible said, the stuff. They were back with the stuff. And he took those 400 men, and they were able to have this great victory and rescue and bring back everything they had lost and more they brought back. They get back to the camp. There's 200 men sitting there, and they're like, our families, our friends, look at the spoil. Oh my gosh, they're excited. And some knuckleheads in the army have to yell out, they didn't go with us. They shouldn't get anything. David said, it's not supposed to be that way. He said, can't you see what God has given us? Can't you see? See, David knew where it came from. Can't you see what God has given us? These guys are saying, we went back and we got all this. This is our stuff. David said, can't you see what God gave us? It's all in your perspective. He was suddenly back with God. It's all in your perspective. Don't you see what God has given us? And you know what he did? It said he went out and started giving gifts to all of them, returned gifts to all of them, gave them spoiled all. Then he went to Israel and he started giving, and there's a list of the gift giving. A lift, he would send, this is a present from the Lord and from your enemies that we've defeated. And started sending gifts, and it's got like a list of, he sent this to these, and this to these, and this to these, and this to these, and this to, and he's giving out gifts all the way down the line. The very last scripture I read at the end of the 30th chapter. Here, I have to read it to you. The last place he goes. It's the end of 30, you'll like this. They're in the big list, and here's the last. And to them which were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were wont to haunt. Told you this was a scary story. I told you this was a scary. Everywhere David was known to be, where he had been, it said he gave gifts. He returned unto them the spoil from the enemies, and rewarded and gave gifts to every one of them people. They didn't even go fight. They weren't even in the battle. They didn't even do it. And they were all giving gifts from the king. How about you? I got gifts from the king. He fought the battle and he won the victory. And it should be like, it's his spoil. It's his victory. It's his. That should be his. It's rightfully his. It is rightfully his. And you know what he says? This same rule, I'm giving it to my people. Here's the victory. Enjoy this. Here's the spoils. Enjoy this. And he gives to every one of us gifts. Does it remind you of Jesus? Said he led captivity captive and gave gifts. Same principle, gave gifts unto men. And we still enjoy those gifts. We still enjoy those gifts every day. The gift of giving, the gift of joy, the gift of peace, the gift of being in that close relationship with God where we don't have the distance and we can feel the peace and we can feel the joy and we can live happy and live a life that's content and filled with God. You can get it in the small things. You can get it in the big things because he gave gifts to men. Told you it was a scary story, but the only scary part is the distance from God. It's all in how you look at it. So, if you're having a scary Halloween, I've got a solution. Just come back close to God. He takes care of everything. Thanks for your attention.